The purpose of this video is to share with you how you can use AI ethically in the cataloging research Unit 1, and what ways would violate our academic honesty policy. So by AI, generative AI, I really am referring to things like ChatGPT or ChatGPT adjacent to platforms such as Grammarly or Copilot, things of those nature. Since this is our first video, I am going to kind of go through why does this matter and just talk a little bit about the fact that it's a little bit complicated. But if you haven't yet reviewed the assignment sheet for Project 1, I would definitely encourage you to start there because I think that you'll have more context for understanding this video if you already know the goals of that project, and you can be thinking about what you will need to accomplish throughout that project. It will help you better understand why I'm saying certain things are fine for Gen AI to use and other things are not. Okay, so why does this matter? We have this piece in our syllabus that says each unit has a generative AI use in project number video, such as this one, associated with it. The video covers the rules for generative AI use for the project we're working on. Since each unit has different goals that need to be met to show authentic understanding, then the ways that AI is considered ethical may change in each project. Essentially, because we have all of these different learning goals, I'm trying to assess your learning, and there are some things that AI can assist with that doesn't necessarily bypass the learning for that unit, but then of course there are other things that AI can assist with that would bypass the learning in that unit. And so each unit is going to need different things or require different things. Sometimes it will be okay to use generative AI to search for sources, and other times you being able to find a source on your own is part of the learning goal of that assignment, and that's why I wouldn't want you to use it. So this matters because this video is going to help you understand not only what are the specific goals that I'm trying to get you to gain from doing these assignments and doing these projects, but also to help you see where your generative AI use might violate a policy, and I don't want anyone to get into that red flag zone of having violated any of the syllabus policies. So I just want to be upfront about that. Again, back to the syllabus language, I just encourage everyone to always watch these videos before each unit. I will go through the different sort of key points of the unit, the key tasks that you will accomplish, and let you know, is it okay for you to use generative AI throughout this part of the task, or should you avoid it? With that being said, if there is any assignment that's submitted that appears to violate the generative AI policy, I'll just put a temporary 0 on the assignment, and I'll let you know, you either need to correct your submission. Here's how it appears you've used AI, and this is why it's violating the policy. You can fix it, or you can set up an appointment with me so that we can discuss more. I do not pretend to know exactly how everyone is using AI, and you may be using it in a way that I'm not understanding. So we can have a conversation about it. But in one way or the other, we'll talk about it, we'll get it corrected, and that temporary 0 hopefully will turn into a legitimate grade, depending on the path we need to take. If there's any temporary 0 that does turn into a permanent 0 for whatever reason, where I might say something like, you've used AI, the way you've explained your use of AI violates the policy, violates the unit goals, here's this video explaining how you can use it and how you can't use it. You've claim to have violated it in this way. No corrections have been made. This is going to have to be a permanent 0, and then I will have to follow through with the college's academic honesty and academic dishonesty sanctions, where that gets reported up to student services, and it gives you an opportunity to continue having that conversation with people above just myself. So that's why all of this matters. It just kind of helps you mostly see how it's okay to use, to open up that conversation, because it really is complicated. I mean, there are ways that AI is acceptable to use, and there are ways that AI is not acceptable to use, and then there's all of the ways in the middle that are a little bit gray. So Let's talk about some of those. For our project, you're going to have to pick a topic to research. And for brainstorming topic ideas, it's approved. I think it's totally fine to use any sort of generative AI to brainstorm topics. And as we talk about these things, you're not required to ever use things like ChatGPT or other generative AI. If you have your own personal policy against it, that's totally fine. It's supported. I completely understand it. However, if you are going to use it for brainstorming topics, here's some things that I suggest. Ask it for quirky, weird, uncommon, or narrow ideas. Ask it for more suggestions than kind of makes sense. Don't just ask it for 2 or 3 suggestions. Ask it for 20. Really force it to give you a whole plethora of content, because that's going to give you more opportunity to really assess for yourself, would I be interested in working with this topic? Why or why not? Well, what about this topic? You're going to be more involved the more that you ask for it, the more that you also have to work with the AI to make a decision. So ask it for like a minimum of 20 suggestions. You can even give it a general topic and ask for subtopics. Maybe you really like a particular topic, but it's too broad, it's too much to research. You want to narrow it down, and you want 20 different ways that you could narrow that down. So, for example, you could type something in like, give me 20 quirky research topic suggestions that relate to skateboarding for a college English project where I need to find real sources. And putting in this language of kind of, how you're going to be using these topics can really help, because when I tried this sample topic out in ChatGPT, it was like, oh, I get it. The research can't be so absurd that you would never find any sort of sources on it, because you are going to have to find real sources here. So kind of giving it some limiting language in order to give it context for how you're going to be using the topic will really help you. But as far as brainstorming topic ideas, ChatGPT is perfectly fine to use. Searching for sources, that's going to be something else that comes up for you. I'm fine if you use ChatGPT to suggest sources, but you do want to make sure that you check to see that the sources are real and that you can access them, because ChatGPT does have an issue with finding real authors, finding titles of sources like books, usually it's books, that would look like they're a real source, and finding, some logical publication dates, but then when it strings it all together, it's not actually the title of the book written by this author. It's a very great sounding book, but it doesn't actually exist. So if you are going to be using a platform like a large language model to search for sources, make sure you've got a way to validate that that source is real. Ask it for legitimate links that it can provide you with, or go and Google that source after it gives you the information to make sure that it's real. Of course, for this project, your goal is to engage with the source in some way. But if your sources aren't real, that's going to be a big red flag that would definitely violate the academic honesty policy. Something that I think probably has happened in the past is, maybe a student will say something like, create an annotated bibliography with summaries, audience purpose tone statements, and in-text citations, and it makes the complete document for you. But those sources could, even though they're summarized, even though they've got, all of the requirements for an annotated bibliography, those sources could absolutely be false. And I've found that, there have been instances in the past where the information is not actually out there. Those sources don't exist. So if you are going to use ChatGPT or other platforms to search for sources, do make sure that you are checking that those sources are real and that you're putting your own eyes on the source. It's definitely not okay not to confirm that it's a real source. Okay, summarizing sources. This is a kind of a gray area. ChatGPT, other large language models, they can be fantastic for boiling down difficult content, but you want to check in with why you are summarizing. So if the content is so complicated that it's above your understanding or knowledge level, like later on in the course we will get with some scholarly articles that are going to take some time to understand and be a little bit challenging. If the goal is just to have a quick summary so that you can let yourself say, hey, I'm going to come back to this research later, then I think it's perfectly fine to use a summarizer tool such as I think ChatGPT will do it, but I'm sure that you guys know there are other ones. So you can ask it for a summary and then, kind of summarize that summary on your own when you're writing your own content. It's okay for a quick summary if you know you're going to come back to it later. Maybe you're doing some research and you're thinking, I might want to use this. Let me just ask for a quick summary and then I will go back in and I will read the article later on when I'm at that stage of the process, and that's okay as well. The ways that it would not really be ethical to use a summarizer for summarizing your sources would be if you're just trying to bypass the reading of the source itself, bypass the understanding of the content. So one thing you really want to be careful of is the summary accurate? If ChatGPT doesn't actually have access to the text itself, then you could get into some issues of it giving you false information, making a summary that sounds like it's probably true, but then when you go and check it against the actual source, it's started to sort of go off in a way that no, the source isn't really talking about. So if you are going to use it for writing summaries and then reviewing those summaries to then summarize the complicated content on your own, you probably want to give it the actual text. You don't just want to give it a title and ask it for a summary, because that might not work. So summaries could be wrong. Summaries could be out of context. Again, it can be in the same idea, but just not quite contextualized appropriately. And then, the biggest way that's using something like ChatGPT or another summarizer, to summarize sources for you, the biggest unethical thing would just be when you're doing it to bypass the reading, when you're doing it just to kind of like check the box of, okay, this has been summarized, and you don't even lay eyes on the paragraphs in that article, or, if you're summarizing a video, you don't even watch the video. A summary should be there to assist your process, but not do the process for you. It should help you with your understanding of the content, but not completely bypass that reading. So use your best judgment. Why do you need the summary? For the purposes of Unit 1, it's really just to kind of, if we're cataloging research, then we're doing it because we're going to come back to it later. So it's okay to ask a summarizing tool for a summary and then kind of put that summary into your own words. Make sure you understand the context of the summary, lay eyes on the article or watch the video, sped up version, and just make sure that it's kind of in line. What it's summarizing looks roughly, with a quick read through, looks roughly like the content that's in there, and that would be okay to do. Okay, for citing, I think that the trust but verify is the way to go with this. I have no problem with y'all using any sort of citation generators, whether that's the ones, we've always heard of, like EasyBib, or whether that's typing in giving something like ChatGPT access to the article and then saying, hey, create an MLA citation for me, or create an APA citation for me. Just keep in mind, you are responsible for the accuracy of that citation. And if you do not know how to check that it's accurate, let me know, because I have a video on how to use a reference guide. But at this point in English 112, you should know how to use a reference guide to cite. If you do not, come see me. But you're responsible for the accuracy. So just because you give it all the information definitely does not mean it's going to give you the correct info back, especially if it's having a hard time accessing the details it needs. If it can't find the author, sometimes it'll just find the first name that it comes to. It's relatively decent at citing as long as you give it the information. You also need to specify what APA or MLA format you want. For example, your prompt needs to say something like, cite this source in MLA 9th edition, cite this source in APA 7th edition. Specifically, which edition are we working with? Those are the ones, APA 7, MLA 9. And you want to tell it how you want it to cite. And if you can give it the details as well, this is the author, this is the title, this is the website it comes from, it's going to be even more accurate the more information you provide it, and that's just going to help you navigate it. Maybe you hate citing because of all of the technical details, like where do I put the period, where do those quotation marks go, what's supposed to be in parentheses in APA format, questions like that. You might be able to just find all the information and then share it with the citation generator. And then it's definitely working more as an assistant, and it's not bypassing any learning. So if you don't know how to check it for accuracy, that would be the thing to kind of build that skill on, because, we need to always make sure that the content that we're getting from these generative AI platforms is accurate, is true, is genuine. So trust but verify. Okay, here is our last slide. Once you've kind of gotten through the project and you're writing your reflection, this is the place where no generative AI assistance is allowed. So the reason for this is because I'm asking you questions about your experience working on this project, and there is never a wrong answer. And really what I'm looking for is just raw honesty about your feelings, your experiences. Did you enjoy this? What do you prefer? How are you thinking about this topic? I don't even really want you to use Grammarly to accept like phrasing changes, because all of that is just too formal. I genuinely am just looking for like off the cuff, this is how I feel, take it or leave it. It does not need to be polished writing. It doesn't need to be grammatically correct writing. You could just voice it into your phone. You could record your reflection and tell me how you felt, answering the questions and working through the project. And I'll provide you with specific questions to respond to, but I do not want any sort of polished writing when it comes to the reflection component in Unit 1. I won't want them for any of the units, but I'll let you know again later. I don't want any polished language. I don't want it to sound perfect. I just want raw honesty of how the project went for you, answering the questions that I ask. So in this case, bad is good. I don't want it to be perfect when you're writing your reflection. So these are the key places where I can see AI being useful and helpful, and then some areas where you want to be careful. You will violate the academic honesty policy for this unit if you use it in some of the ways that I've mentioned. If there are other gray areas in this project, like, oh, can I use it for this? Should I use it for that? And you're not sure, please always just come to me. Artificial intelligence is a fun conversation. I love to have it. I love to know how y'all are using it. I am totally open to learning about your use of it and deciding, hey, here's how this might violate it, so be careful you're not doing this, but otherwise go for it. I think that the more that we have open and honest conversations about how students are using AI, everybody will kind of end up feeling a little bit more comfortable with it in an academic setting. So if you have any questions, if you want to discuss any areas, if you're thinking, hey, I'm using it in this way, is this all right? Just come talk to me, send me an email, it's totally fine. But otherwise, I hope this video makes sense. If you have any questions, again, this is specific policy information, so if you have questions, please direct them to me. You can send me an email because I would be happy to clarify. Otherwise, happy researching.